Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the February 26, 2025 Public Works Committee meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. As we begin, are there any disclosures of interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary? Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Korstanji, Councillor Howe. Moved by Councillor Korstanji, seconded by Councillor Howe. Are there any questions? Resolved that the agenda for February 26, 2025 Public Works Committee be approved. All in favor? It's carried. Next, we have receipt of previous minutes. Can I get a mover and seconder to receive the previous minutes, please? Councillor Davoli, moved by Councillor Davoli, seconded by Member Smink. Are there any questions from the committee about the previous minutes? Seeing none, resolve that the minutes of the January 29th, 2025 Public Works Committee meeting be approved. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right, delegations and presentations. We have a delegation from Brandon Wortman. It's not really a delegation. Presentation from Brandon Wortman, Director of Public Works, unless you're an external. Finally, somebody speaking up about Brandon. Providing an update on the Grimsby Downtown Reimagined project. Can I get a mover and seconder to receive the delegation, please? I've got Member Murphy, seconded by Councillor Korstanji. Brandon, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the members of the committee. So I just wanted to update Public Works Committee on the progress of our Downtown Reimagined project and provide some insights as to where we're headed over the next year and a half. I did provide a similar presentation to our Grimsby Downtown BIA earlier this month, and I just wanted to be cognizant of our time here, so I've tried to compress the presentation as much as I can. There's a lot of work that's happening in the background, and a presentation summarizes just some of it. So again, just want to be cognizant of the time. So I'd be happy to speak or answer questions or talk to you offline if you need more details. So I did want to note that I made some last minute changes to the presentation today, so the slides may not look exactly as was included in the agenda. There's a few minor tweaks here or there, but again, I can circulate the updated presentation as well. Next slide. So just to provide a bit of an overview of our project team and our key partners. Town of Grimsby obviously is leading the project with the help of our engineering design consultant, SEMA Plus. The region of Niagara Public Works is a key partner as the work is occurring on a regional roadway and their assets are involved. Other key partners are the Grimsby Downtown BIA, as well as the Grimsby and District Chamber of Commerce. So as far as our internal project team, obviously myself leading the department, Marvin Ingritston, he's our Manager of Infrastructure Engineering. He's the project manager on the project. Martin Reed, he's our civil engineering technologist, and calling him our quarterback or our project lead. Obviously, Christina Davidson, our communications person, is assisting on the communication side of things. Michael Palumba, who was involved and who has led the initial phase of the Downtown Reimagined visioning exercise, is also supporting this project, along with many others from this department and others. Next slide. So the Downtown Reimagined project consists essentially of like three phases. There's the visioning exercise or the visioning study, a detailed design process, and as well as construction. The next slide. To refresh everyone's memory about the project's origin and evolution, so the downtown project originates from the town's need to replace our aging water infrastructure in the core. Water main is in that area is circa 1950s and has exceeded its useful service life. Understanding that we'd be digging up the roadway to replace the water main, that brought the opportunity for us to refresh the landscape at the same time. So accordingly, the town commissioned a visioning or study exercise to work with the community and stakeholders to provide an updated vision for the downtown of Grimsby. Through that process, several deliverables were produced, including a parking study, a traffic study, design guidelines, and a design concept plan. Next slide. So through the visioning exercise, we were able to collect valuable feedback from the public as well as the various stakeholders, including our business partners from the downtown, BIA. This feedback was critical in supporting the development of the design guidelines for the project. And the design guidelines are essentially the ingredients or recipe that we need to follow in bringing that collective vision to a reality. The guidelines included a vision statement and a series of guiding principles that help capture the key messages that we heard from our community. Those guidelines were then used to develop a conceptual design plan, which started putting that vision into a picture. Next slide. So this is the concept slide that was developed and shared by the Public Information Center and ultimately approved at Council last March. And I just wanted to stress that it's a conceptual plan at this point in time, and the design is going to be fleshed out as we go through that detailed design process. So just to refresh on some of the key features, we're providing a larger pedestrian space, narrowing the roadway to slow traffic and provide a more pedestrian-friendly feel, introducing a new mid-block pedestrian crossing, providing flexible spaces that be converted from parking to sidewalk space and vice versa. And a big component is refreshing our streetscaping, so providing trees, streetlights, benches, and bike racks. And the next slide, please. So this is a conceptual cross-section. So we're, again, reducing the asphalt to 2 lanes of traffic, which in exchange allows us to add new flexible spaces on either side of the roadway. The flexible parking will be interchangeable, serving as a pedestrian space at times when it's needed, and additional patio space or parking spaces when needed. So basically provide some flexibility in how we're using that space going forward. Next slide. So I thought it might be helpful to show what the proposed footprint might look like when laying it out over top of an aerial image. So just to orientate yourself, the top is the north with Christie and Mountain on the left, and then Ontario Street in the center and Elm Street on the right. Next slide. So we're just adding in the building footprints, next slide, and adding in the platform. Realize that's hard to see on the screen, but certainly if you look at your agenda package, might be a little bit clearer. So again, narrowing the asphalt platform to hold 2 lanes of traffic, and conversely, we're widening the platform outside the travel portion for pedestrians. Also to note, we are narrowing Ontario Street to 2 lanes of traffic. Currently, it's 3 lanes there, a left in, left out, or sorry, an in and 2 outs, a left onto Main and a right onto Main. We're also looking to add a mid-block pedestrian crossing that's shown in the middle of the drawing, just with a ladder walk paint marks there. And that'd be closely close to the downtown archway. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we're incorporating some of the boulevard as flexible space. So here we're showing the approximate locations that we'd be considering for flexible spaces in orange. And we're also providing 2 pictures that show how that space would function. Both the pictures are showing the same area of King Street and Kitchener-Waterloo. On the left-hand side shows the space being made available for parking, and on the right-hand side is that same space, but it's been given back to the pedestrian realm. In this instance, it's being utilized as an outdoor patio. So you notice in the flexible style that there's some singular mountable curb to delineate the road from the sidewalk, and there's no secondary barrier in behind the parking, which is typical with a more traditional lay-by parking. Essentially, that allows the space to be more accessible and provides a more ability for reducing any barriers to persons with needs. The left-hand side of the photo, as you can see, is a movable bollard and is used to delineate the space that they're not permitted for parking. So these are, sorry, next slide. These are some pictures, again, of King Street and Kitchener-Waterloo for inspiration. You can see some of those changes in the textures and colors of the surfaces in the boulevard, some of the furnishings that they've provided, including, bollards and the bike racks and the tree planters. So just to give you an idea of how, especially on the right, how you can see how the flexible space can be broken up with different colors and patterns to help just break up that color of that space. Next slide. So this is another example of the flexible space, and this picture is from Midland, Ontario. Difference here is they have a much wider cross-section. You can see their buildings are set much farther back, but just gives you, again, an idea of how you can break up that space with different colors and styles and treatments and landscaping. So just to give you some idea of, spark your interest of what we can bring forward to the downtown. Next slide. So just here we're providing a bit of a timeline with respect to our progress over the last year or so. Design guidelines and the concept plan were approved by council last March, as I had mentioned. From there, we needed to develop a request for proposal or an RFP in order to hire an engineering consultant to prepare the detailed design. This required some collaboration with our partners at the region, as again, they'll be working on the roadway. The RFP went out to market mid-May and closed towards the end of June, and we end up awarding the project to CEMA Plus, as I had mentioned earlier. Staff are very happy to bring on CEMA. We've worked with them in the past on a similar project in the West End, Grimsby on the Lake area. They were the design engineer in the reconstruction of that road on Winston Road. So I feel like we're in good hands here. So we had a kickoff meeting with them in October. And CEMA has been working for the last few months doing some surveying, investigating, and developing some preliminary plans. And they've also been working and developing a draft communication strategy as well as developing the project webpage for our first round of project notices. We've also started communications with the BIA, and the Chamber of Commerce, particularly through Amanda McDonald and Rebecca Shelley, and have been instrumental in helping us kick off the project on the right foot with our partners. Next slide. Next couple of slides just show a general layout of how we see the project rolling over the next year and a half. So we expect our project page to go live at the end of the week, and notices to follow shortly afterwards. Social media posts will be provided to help get the word out as well. And as we're moving through the preliminary design over the next month or so, we expect to be scheduling some stakeholder meetings in the spring. The spring or summer, we'll be building out the design with a continued engagement with our stakeholders, and we're expecting the project to go to tender sometime this fall, with construction beginning as early as fall or winter of this year. And then the next slide. So the initial construction at this point in time will be limited to the work outside of the downtown core. As we move into the following year, we expect to be moving into the downtown core, so the primary area between Christie and Elm, and likely with the bulk of the work happening in the summer of 2026. But we understand we may start sooner, subject to our progress and obviously conversations with our downtown partners. Anticipate that the work to be wrapped up in the fall of next year. And just to stress, the schedule is very high level, but we did want to provide some clarity as to how we move forward, and as we move through that process, things will become clearer as the details come. And then I also too, just adding that the downtown businesses will be important to our conversations as we work on a schedule, and we'll be meeting with them and getting their input as we move through that process. Next slide. So as mentioned, CEMA is working on the communication strategy. Again, this is going to help inform how we're communicating with the community at large and the businesses downtown. We understand that the stakeholder and community communication is essential to our successful completion of that project. And we'll be carrying out significant engagement with downtown partners over the coming months. Showing here some of the ways that we'll be engaging with them, the stakeholder meetings at Q Milestones. We've committed to attending the regular BIA Construction Committee meetings, and as well as an overarching communications occurring through our project page. Expected communications outcomes for that strategy is some form of an open for business campaign, or whether it's radio, marketing, and signage. Community communications plan, identifying the key milestones, meeting dates, and planned communications for each stage. Providing regular updates to the website and social media regarding schedule, disruptions, and events, and as well as a business marketing campaign will be put in place to help maintain and encourage patronage during construction. So things that we'll be seeking feedback from the BIA on is the timing of construction, as I had mentioned, the road closures versus keeping lane open. So there's an opportunity for us to keep traffic flowing through there. However, that could take longer construction, or if we can close roads in strategic locations for strategic times, it may help the work happen a little bit quicker. So we'll be exploring that with the businesses as we move forward. Also, some accessibility opportunities and restrictions. So how do we keep foot traffic going into those businesses during the construction, and ultimately what we can do to support them through that process. Again, that business open campaign. Just in the next slide, just to recap. Or just to rehash that the notices will be circulated soon. They'll be including a updated QR code, which will take them to the new project page for the design and construction phase. And we would encourage people to subscribe through that project page, and which will allow them to receive regular updates on the project. Project page will also have contact information for our project team, and again, if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to the project team through that location, and we'll be happy to engage with them and answer any questions that we can. And I think that's it. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are. I don't know, I'm a delegate. Are you allowed to ask questions of a delegate?
Same rules as everybody else. 5 minutes. Thank you, Brandon. I've got Councillor Davoli first.
Oh, thank you. My questions are fairly two very specific ones, and then one I'd just like you to expand a bit on. So I guess asking for some more of your vision on what I call the flexible parking or public space. Some communities and in those pictures show I'll call it portable fencing around the patios and so on. Who would we envision would be the owner of that fencing?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So in the case, we rolled out a similar program, if you remember, during COVID, where the business owners were permitted to provide patio space on the road allowances, and they applied to us through a permit, an occupancy permit. So they invested in that, those features to protect or to delineate their patio space, and that was under their kind of ownership, but they had to get a permit from both the town and the region to allow that work to occur. So I could see something very similar to that occurring going forward, and we would have to manage that as those applications come in. And the idea behind this flexible space is if the space isn't needed for patios, it can be turned back over cars, and if the businesses want that space for patios, then through that permit process we could engage them in that.
So we're not really envisioning that there's anything we need to do uniquely during the construction to delineate those spaces. It's not like, do we need to put something special under the /parking spots, concrete, in order to stabilize fencing that's put up, or does all that enter into it, or no? They're just going to be acquiring the fencing like they did the last time and drilling into our cement or whatever they do to stabilize it. Just talk to me about how that would be done.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I think I understand where you're going with this. So the idea is any structures that they're putting on there would be self-standing and not require them to drill into the new concrete. So that would be part of our review processes. Please don't mess up the new concrete with your drill holes. Yeah, it would be something that we'd look at. In terms of further delineation, I did mention that the bollards would help keep the traffic or the vehicles off that space when it's being used for the pedestrian realm or the patios, and then they would be removed to allow that parking to occur again.
My second question has to do with my all-time favorite topic between us, and that's the bollards, the movable bollards. And I had the opportunity to be in downtown Montreal a few months ago, and they do have movable ones. And really, a truck just pulled up, the driver hopped out, pulled the bollard out, kept going, came around, parked, put the bollard back in, which sounds so convenient and so easy. But at the same time, having watched what one of the businesses downtown just went through with the robberies and so on, a part of me thinks, oh no, bollards, so easy to pull out of the ground and heave it at something, right? So, yeah, expand the concept of these bollards.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So not that we've got into that level of detail yet, but I do envision that we as in the town would have control over how those bollards get removed and replaced. I don't think we'd want to allow them to be just pulled off and relocated because I think they would go missing. So some type of key system or something like that. I know previous conversations were around the automatic ones that go up and down. I'm not sure in our climate with the amount of salt that we put down to try to keep people from slipping and falling that those will be effective, but we'll certainly look into that.
Thank you. And then, and I don't know if the question is too early in the process, but I know, the Downtown Business Improvement Association has the construction committee, and you mentioned sort of a business open campaign. Expand upon maybe your thoughts on how much of this campaign would really be, I'll say, driven and the costs borne by the town versus the role of the Downtown Business Improvement Association.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So, very good question. I think we're exploring that as we go. As part of our consultation request for proposal, a component of our work was to include an element of the communication strategy, understanding that the BIA has stepped up as well and has initiated that construction task force and has also brought to the table some financial resources that will be put towards it too. So I think we're still in the process of working out what that looks like. And so far, I think it's really a positive story for us to see that our business partners and ourselves are working together cohesively towards this. We know that it's going to be pain in the downtown, but I think there's been enough lead time, and we're starting to build those relationships, if we haven't already, to help keep this as cordial as possible without us screaming at each other by the end. So I'm hopeful when we go through this project that'll be the case at the end as well.
So related to that, we have a overall budget for this project. Are you thinking that there is a wee slice of it then that is going to be for communications? Or is that going to come out of I'll call it a different pot?
There we go. Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know if I can classify it as a wee slice or not. I can certainly, as the details come further, so, again, we hired a consultant. A component of what we're paying that consultant to do is to help with that communication strategy. So an element of that will be the consultant using the resources that we have to provide that communication, whether it's through the website or delivering notices, that kind of thing. The Downtown BIA is also using their own resources to provide their own level of communication as well in that strategy. So I don't exactly know what that framework is going to look like yet, but I think it's fair to say we're both be putting dollars on the table to help support that. So I can't give you the exact details, but I can certainly, as things become more clear and as I provide more further updates, I can certainly tell you kind of here's the way things are lining up. Hopefully that's helpful.
Further questions for Brandon? Member Spink?
How many do I get?
My name's Michelle.
Okay. Can I ask you first about at what point of the design process that the staging plan will be developed? And because I see this as very crucial. You talked briefly about the sort of the two major ways that it can happen, leaving a lane, or I guess potentially two, open, or closing the Main Street completely, say, in order to greatly speed up construction. I always have in my mind, because I think it was our very first meeting that I had, it was like October 2026, the water main downtown needs to be done in order for that grant to happen. So I'm just curious, at 30%, I'm not expecting that you've talked about staging at all. Are you at least going to have sort of the principles at your 60% design, and then are you going to get into the details of that staging at 90? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I think maybe not at 30%, but certainly we haven't had the conversation yet in terms of those details, but it was communicated early on from the town's perspective and in the RFP, the request for proposal, that was a key component of this. Is a traditional project, you may say, contractor, you tell me how you're going to manage this traffic. In this case, what we've asked is the consultant, up front, we want you to look at this, how we manage this project, how we manage the traffic through here, in consultation, obviously, with the town, the region, and the business owners, so that when we put it out to construction, it's going to say, hey, contractor, here's how we want you to manage that traffic. So we will work through those details, and again, the business owners will be important in that conversation. Do I expect every business owner to agree that this start closure date, this end closure date is exactly what works for them? I don't think so. I think that's a bit naive, but I'm hoping that we can get the majority and at least hear their input as we move through that process.
Thank you. I forgot to say through you, Mr. Chair. And I will, as well as that hard date, there will be surprises. I do see one potential that if there's any problems with the RFP, getting the right qualifications for contractors, getting enough bids, having that process, if that's has a hang up, it means the construction won't start until spring of 2026. And then there's going to be a rush if there's any kind of a problem under the ground that we don't know about. And I know you know that, but I'm telling the committee. You had a cross-section, and I know you're just at concept, but I also see just physically a real issue with your heights of your entries into your the north side and the south side, especially as you get up towards, the Ontario Street end. So my question is, at what point are you going to be looking at being able to ensure the access to all of those businesses and the crossfall, because it's complicated by the change in the parking arrangement? Thank you.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. So as it stands right now, we're still in the, I guess, preliminary stage of we're overlaying. Here's what the new floor plan maybe is the best way to explain it, or an easy way to explain it for people. So we're not into the how does that look vertically, but how does that look on a flat surface. Here's where the cross section is going to look like. Understanding that there is some grade separations or grade differences, so elevation differences towards the post office. You can see that now with the steps that go up to the post office. So we will be, as we work through that detailed design, we will be making sure that that we can accommodate those grade changes. And so this cross section is a typical cross section. It's not every area is going to be like this. So yes, that's a very good point to understand that there will be some areas where we can't achieve that flexible space in the same manner. But what I'd like to think we can do is maybe clean up that space so it's a little bit more activated with landscaping and things like that, that it's not, maybe not stairs for that whole, but maybe we can break that up with some landscaping and some different features that maybe makes it a little bit more inviting and safer for pedestrians as they navigate the area.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I will just point out on your concept, and I don't know if you can do anything about this because I know there has to be a no parking area close to the pedestrian crosswalk, but I believe you don't have a space for patio in front of Teddy's, which might be an issue. But my last question has to do about communication. What I have seen work very well during construction is an ambassador of some type that will be doing real-time updates. I love the QR code, but also for each of the businesses as things are changing. You know, your water's going off in 2 days' time. This is how long it's going to be. This is the number you can call, and all of those things. So I've seen it done two ways. One is through the contractor, and one is through our design team, which I understand is also the contract administrator. And I just wondered if there's been any discussion of that, because I do see that as a really important part of the communication.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. No, I think we're in the same, on the same page there. We did a visit to Oakville, who had a very similar project. I don't know when we visited, a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. But essentially, that was the number one takeaway they provided for us on their lessons learned. It was, they did that, and they said that was a very useful, what do you call it, process or thing to have with that project, was to have that project ambassador. I think in that case, it was the contractor who provided it. So again, as part of their bid, they said you need to have a project ambassador, and their purpose of that is to make sure Mrs. Smith, who's coming with her walker, knows where to go that day at that time, kind of thing. So that'll be as part of our, as we move forward through this. So I think there's a bit of overlap between, there'll be the contract administrator who will have daytime or on-site inspection, as well as the contractor who will have some form of a project ambassador. So I think we're very aligned in terms of that's what our expectations is to see as well. I just don't know to what level and to who that responsibility is. I'm leaning to, as it stands now, to me it's more of a contractor thing, but obviously the consultant having that contract administration is going to be involved as well as our project team as well. So we've told Martin basically that will be his primary responsibility, and he's I think he's looking forward to it. So.
Other questions from members of the committee? I've got a couple. Let me just go back up here. So the reduction of Ontario Street to 2 lanes with the wider sidewalk there and pedestrian space, from a design perspective, I think is a terrific idea. I'm concerned about the flexible sidewalk parking on Ontario Street because of the way that traffic flows through there. And I'm also concerned about the removal of a left turn lane when we know that there are 80 whatever new units going in on Doran Avenue with the condos going in there, and potentially more as, you know, development occurs. So have we explored from a traffic perspective if removing the left turn lane is the right option? And so if you can, if that is that coming forward in the next stage?
Yeah. So as I'd mentioned, thank you to you, Mr. Chair. So as I mentioned, that we, as part of the preliminary design process, or that the vision exercise, one of the, we heard those comments about traffic and parking, and we did take some extra time to do those reviews. So we have done traffic movement counts at Ontario Street to look at both the current situation, current condition, and future condition with growth in it. And we're happy to say that we feel that we're comfortable and that intersection can accommodate it. Is it going to be an improvement to the intersection? No. Is it going to make it significantly worse? I think the answer is also no. So in terms of, you did mention that there would be a flexible space on Ontario Street. I don't think that's the current plan, is although it shows wider, that we don't anticipate that flexible space will also be on the Ontario Street, specifically within that section. In the future, as we move down Ontario Street with future later projects, that might be an opportunity, but as it stands right now, we're not seeing that as a current scope of the project.
That's great. I think from a pedestrian perspective and from a street perspective, it's going to be a huge improvement. It's an intimidating place to cross as a pedestrian, and we know that anytime you reduce the space, it makes people feel more comfortable. It also opens up that corner for future businesses. There's a coffee shop there now, but things change there all the time, so I like the idea.
Yeah, if I can just add to that. So part of the reasoning why we're narrowing up that space and actually bumping it out, so where the cars stop right now is when you look left and right, you have to creep up so you can get around the building. The idea is we'd be moving the pedestrian crossing there, so the east-west crossing, to allow for the pedestrians to be pushed out from the building, so when the cars come up and stop, they can see those pedestrians and there isn't that blind spot. So so the goal there is to make that a more safe and accessible place. So thank you for bringing that up.
And further to that, I'd like to see that crosswalk, whether it's a different color or something that kind of integrates it in everything that we could do to make the downtown more walkable and pedestrian friendly. It isn't that right now. Obviously, this design is going to take all those things into consideration, but I like everything you're saying. Other questions I had were, so when we remove the curb, let's say in front of just the Main Street businesses and make it the flexible sidewalk / parking / patio, all the things that it's going to be, aside from the bollards, which are meant to protect pedestrians and, people sitting at patios, what speed calming measures are we going to put in place on Main Street to protect those pedestrians? Because currently, parking on the road acts as street calming. I mean, we know that when people park on the road, it slows people down. And I'm concerned that making that flexible like that gives people a little bit more space to park, because the curb kind of acts as a restriction. But what that means, in our intent to make the street more narrow, it might make the street a little bit more wide in places and encourage speeding. So that's definitely a place where we want to slow people down. So is speed calming part of that? I know the crosswalk is going to be there. Is it elevated to slow people down, or is it just a traditional crosswalk? If you could touch upon things like that.
Yeah, so I don't think we've got to the detail of whether the crosswalk will be elevated. I think typically on regional roads, I don't think they provide any tabletops, or I'm not aware of any, but we can certainly tabletops or speed bumps. But certainly we can have that conversation as we move forward. In terms of the calming measures, so yes, you're correct that we're taking the parking off the street, but also we are bringing a curb in that there is no, that provides the new, guardrails or guide rails for the driver. So that will help with the curbs and the vegetation and some of the street features to help feel like you're driving through a compressed area, which will help in the calming measures. So also we'll be looking at things in particular like pavement markings, treatments. You had mentioned the crosswalk. We may look at, in terms of the pedestrian crossing that's at mid-block, some additional textured asphalt or textured concrete to that walkway to make it to feel to give the driver's perception that you're entering into a pedestrian-friendly area. So all of those will be considered as we move forward. So so the short answer is yes. That's very important to us, is that we want to calm that traffic as we go through there, and part of that is compressing the road and compressing the cross section as you move through there, that you feel like, okay, I'm entering a area that I need to slow down.
Excellent, thank you. You alluded to the elevation difference between, that starts in the east end and goes pretty much to the CIBC. Do we have any kind of a sneak preview of how that's going to be dealt with? Or is that still part of the design phase that's coming forward and we're not 100% sure? Because I'd love to, that's going to be a huge, obviously you can't have, if your flexible sidewalk would be, at a 45-degree angle in some of those parts if we did that. So it would have to be something other than that. So I'm curious to see how we're going to deal with that.
So through you, to you, Mr. Chair, we haven't got to that level of detail yet, but I think that actually brings a special opportunity for us with the grade separations, that we can do some different things there to break it up a little bit. So I have some ideas, but I don't know. I'd hate to say them now if they're not gonna. But I do think that we can probably do something exciting there with plantings and things like that. But yeah. It's unreasonable for us to say that we're going to get that same grade just based on where the buildings sit on the south side of the road near Elm Street. So they are a little bit higher. There's steps there, so we're going to have to look at how we accommodate that as we go through the design.
And last one. So when we were talking about this a year ago, I've been to places where this has been done before. I was in Oakville when they were doing the Oakville one. I was in Port Hope last year when they were tearing up their downtown, and it was completely closed. And one of the things that a lot of these municipalities did, where it was possible, was enhance the rear entrances to these buildings. I've mentioned we have an opportunity to promote because the parking tends to be in the rear of these buildings, to promote rear access to the buildings. Has there been any thought given to whether it's a signage grant program or we've had facade improvement grants in the past through Heritage, to any kind of program, a one-off, first half of 2026 rear entry improvement program because a lot of these businesses have doors at the back of the building, but don't really use them because they, whether from a staffing perspective, they can't afford to have staff at both sides, or, but a lot of these businesses will only be able to use that rear entrance for a short period of time. So if we can help them promote that in the long term, it's also good for Grimsby because the parking lot that's there will be used and will reduce the amount of people needing to park on Main Street, and we won't have to deal with those kinds of complaints. So any thoughts given to that, and if you want to touch on that a little bit?
Through to you, Mr. Chair. So very good question. So I think there's kind of two timelines for that, or there's the short term in terms of the construction and what we're doing in terms of providing directional signage within that area to get people to the back doors or through the alleyways to the front, that kind of thing. And then there's the more longer term initiative of how can we activate those backyards, for lack of a better word, the rear facades of those buildings to make them have a similar downtown feel in the front as in the back, or as the back as in the front. So that we'll be working through as part of our parking study, which is also going on kind of part and parcel with this, is we'll be discussing how we can reimagine the areas behind the buildings, how we may be able to partner with the landowners back there to see how we can incorporate their private parking in with the public parking supply, how we can activate the rear facades to be more of a Main Street feel in the back too. So all of that will be part of the parking study. So in the short term, immediately it's yes, how do we make sure that we sign those areas accordingly so we can everyone knows where to go and how to get there, as well as how do we get them through the alleyways. So it'll be working with the business owners and the BIA through that task force to have those conversations.
Okay, awesome. Thanks very much. Other questions or comments for Mr. Wharton? Yep. Member
Just
Murphy?
one. On the south side, I'm just looking where the parking spots are. Is there anything to stop a car from driving up on the sidewalk? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you to you, Mr. Chair. So as it stands, like in terms of when it's not a pedestrian space, it would be the bollards. Sorry, hang on. Let me make sure I say this right. When it's being used for parking, there would be no bollards. When it's being used for pedestrian space, the bollards would be in place to help protect that space. What we could do and will likely happen is there could be two sets of bollards, one that's close to the curb and one that's closer to the parking spots or on the back side of the parking spots or that flexible space, which may provide a buffer when the parking occurs that they don't enter into that pedestrian space. So I think we'll sort out the details, but a very good question that something that we need to consider, the pedestrian safety that vehicles and that overlap or that conflict.
Okay, great questions, great discussion, everybody. Thanks, Brandon. Resolved that the presentation from Brandon Wartman, Director of Public Works, regarding an update on the Downtown Reimagined project be received for information. That's moved by Member Murphy, seconded by Councillor Kristanji. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So we have no consent reports. We can move on to discussion reports. The first discussion report is the 2024 Annual Drinking Water System Quality Report. Can I get a mover and seconder to get it on the floor for discussion? Member Kristanji and, Member Kristanji, Councillor Kristanji, moved by Councillor Kristanji, seconded by Councillor Howe. Which staff member is covering this one? Thomas, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So the report we have in front of you here is essentially a summary of all the quality sampling that was done on the drinking water system in the year 2024, as well as summarizing any adverse incidents that occurred. The purpose of this report, as outlined under the OREG, is basically to summarize that report to council or the ownership representatives of the system, as well as reporting to the ministry any other connected systems. So we'll be contacting and reaching out to Hamilton and Lincoln and Niagara Region as well, just to kind of inform them about the quality of our system throughout the year. The report here does have a quick table summarizing the total numbers of samples taken, as well as a quick summary just identifying the two adverse incidents we did have in 2024. We almost made it through the year. They were both right at the very end of the year, but they're summarized here, and there is sort of more detail in the appendix if you have any questions or want to ask anything about it.
Any questions for Thomas? I'm going to give people time to think about it. Okay. Brandon, any questions? No. Seeing no questions, resolved that report DPW 2503 2024 Annual Drinking Water System Quality Report dated February 24th, 2025 be received for information. All in favor? That's carried. Second and final discussion report is the 2024 Annual Drinking Water System Municipal Summary Report. Can I get a mover and seconder to get those on the floor? Moved by Councillor DeVoli, seconded by Member Smink. Who's on for that one? Oh, same guy. Thomas. Let's make this one harder on him.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So this second report we have for you, maybe we should have lined up first, but this is basically a annual report, again, required under the OREG for us to report to council, basically, of the compliance of our system in a given year. So you can see we've outlined here that there were requirements under or legal obligations under the Safe Drinking Water Act in order to report any failures of the system or failures to meet requirements as are outlined under our permit, under our drinking water license, under the ministry, and under the Safe Drinking Water Act. As well as there is a requirement for us to report on make sure I get the term right, the capabilities of our system to meet its existing as well as planned needs. And basically what that is saying is how much water is there produced within our system versus how much are we drawing down from that system. That information is acquired through the region as they're the ones who actually supply the water to us. So the table that's provided there is all of the water supplied into the Grimsby system, or the greater Grimsby system, which would include West Lincoln and parts of Lincoln as well. So basically the total plant capacity, and the summaries of the usages there include their volumes as well. So just a quick summary on that one. You can see that I think the maximums usually average somewhere around 30% of total plant capacity is sort of the peak. There is a quick update, and I think Noah has it on the board here. The 2024 numbers that pulled to this report were actually incorrect. So the ones that are in your report will be slightly different from the ones that are displayed here. So we will update that correction prior to sending this out for the final. That's really the summary of what this report is. We do attach, I believe there's 4 appendices. The first 3 are really the most important ones for council, for the ownership, which kind of summarizes the legal responsibilities of council, of the owners of the systems and what they need to do, as well as outlining how we interact with different stakeholders who are involved with the system. So it basically is a summary just outlining what our roles and responsibilities are for each of the different stakeholders involved with the system. And that's basically it, though. So if there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer.
I have a quick question. Maybe I'm getting my reports wrong, but I thought that these reports typically, and if I missed it, I apologize, contained every incident of failure. So like any time that that there was a like a high level of something, any time that something needed to be flushed. Is that a different report? And I apologize if it is. Maybe I'm getting them mixed up.
Through your chair. So the summary report we're looking at now is basically an overall compliance summary for the system, not looking at sort of adverse test results. The quality summary report, the prior report, that would have highlighted any exceedances. So on the prior report, there were 2 exceedances. Neither of them were a exceedance of a standard. It was a adverse that we declared due to loss of system pressure because of water main break. So that's one that we declared basically when we have a large scale break that we have a potential for infiltration back into the system, or where we just have a big drop and we're losing water pressure to like a large number of residents. So we would declare an adverse quality incident then, and that kind of triggers requirements for resampling or various things, contacting MECP, contacting Ministry of Health. It just steers things differently. But yes, that would be on the prior report.
Thank you. Member Smink.
Just a quick question, first of all, about capacity. I think you mentioned it in the report. We're 30% or something like that, but the plant is being increased because of projections to 2051. Can you just explain that to me? And then I have one other quick question.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so the table here presents the current state of the plant capacity that it can produce, as well as sort of the average volumes that are pulled. But yes, the growth projections for both Lincoln, West Lincoln, and Grimsby are what have dictated sort of the region to increase plant capacities there. So I don't have their numbers in front of me, what their projections are, but I'm presuming that it pushes them, to beyond some comfortable threshold of current plant capacity, where they don't want to, ride the limit of, we don't want to, I don't think they want to sit at around, 80% or 90% of plant capacity. They would want to increase it to ensure they have that safety buffer there.
Sorry, just to add to that and piggyback Thomas's comments. So the region right now is in the process of doing an environmental assessment. So as part of that environmental assessment process and their Grimsby Water Treatment Plant Master Plan, they've identified those growth numbers. important to note that the town is currently also looking at those growth numbers as part of our official plan. So it'll be our responsibility to identify any changes in those growth numbers and feed them back to the region, so then they have that information to update their environmental assessment process for both of the treatment plants, both the drinking water and the wastewater treatment plants.
Through you, Mr. Chair. As you're talking about adverse events and what we would characterize as an adverse event, we're planning on replacing a lot of water main. Is there a plan in place that you're going to have to put in place because of going from the old water main to a new water main? Or do you understand what I mean? Through the construction period, I'm anticipating that there may be a very different report in 2 years' time.
Through you, Chair, from a water quality standpoint, really, I'm replacing the main is more of a asset-related end of things. We're doing that because we want to improve the quality of that asset. It's not necessarily improving the quality of the water within that pipe. As far as the two adverses we did have last year were due to main breaks. As we are replacing older mains, we tend to see a reduction in the number of breaks that could lead to those. As far as water quality, if we're talking chlorine numbers or microbiological numbers, we shouldn't really see an impact to that from the testing. As we do install new water mains, we will do sort of a larger number of tests will be taken just due to the water main commissioning process. So that does, I guess, offer the chance to have an increased number of adverses just due to the increase in overall testing. But really, it shouldn't have any impact on the actual water quality within the pipes, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Any further questions for Thomas? Seeing none, resolve that report DPW 2504, 2024 Annual Drinking Water System Municipal Summary Report dated February 26, 2025 be received for information. All in favor? It's carried. We have no correspondence. The first piece of other business is a verbal update on roads QMS and water QMS internal audit from Public Works staff. Brandon, please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that will actually, Ben's going to provide an update on that.
Thank you, and through you, the chair. The last time we were here, we presented on the RQMS system. There was a question from a member of the committee regarding the audit results, which were presented from 2023, not from 2024, as we were waiting for those results. So we wanted to take an opportunity to come to the committee tonight just to provide a verbal update on some of those results from those internal audits as provided by our consultant. Regarding the 2024 DW QMS audit, we had 2 non-conformances issued under measurement and recording equipment. One was specific to a meter and a backflow, which was listed in an inventory list as being out of service, but wasn't tagged in the field. Another was the finding of test kits from our chlorine kits being found to be expired in August, audit taking place in November, December. There were 6 opportunities for improvement listed within the internal audit findings. Again, 3 were specific to document and record control and suggested improvements to how we document our revision histories and updating formatting within those documents and updating our document storage process. There were 2 specific to typos found within a document, and 1 with regard to adding a free text field within an existing action log. Regarding the RQMS system, there were 3 non-conformants which were issued. 1 for a document not containing the wet signatures of the endorsing parties and only the names of those parties. Another one was the town's fleet work order system was not explicitly listed within the document or record control matrix. And 1 for the link to a document within our network drive not functioning or not pointing to the right direction of or location of that file. There were 4 opportunities for improvement. 1 which was regarding improvements to how we're storing documents and accessing documents. 1 for additional training for staff from a record control. standpoint. That one was specific to staff, photocopying forms rather than looking to the drive as the primary repository for the most up-to-date document. And one was related to the formatting within an existing Excel log, pointing to whether an item had been completed or required, additional follow-up. And one was just to update our network drive with the most current agreements with third parties such as the MTO or CN. Those are the updates regarding both QMS audits. Most have been corrected to date. However, there are two items that remain ongoing or in works. One specifically is the training plan for 2025, which will look at additional record control training for staff. And the other one is looking towards kind of modernizing how we manage our fleet and moving that to a QMS. Happy to answer any questions or take any comments from the group.
Any questions for Ben? Councillor DeVoley?
I'm not sure my question is for Ben, and it might just be to our director. I know. So we have these reports. I'm just stepping back from all of them, so it's not a detailed question about the reports. We have these reports that come to us that tell us that you're sampling, you're examining your processes, you're looking at all those things, and these are the results from it, right? And I don't mean to equate this to Walkerton, but in the Walkerton example, which started this whole revision of our processes and our sampling, there were people who were pretending to do things, but were not actually doing them, right? And they too were reporting to their council and their directors and so on, saying, oh, we're doing this and everything's fine, but it wasn't, right? So tonight and at other meetings, of course, we get reports from staff that are internal reports saying this is the internal work that we've done. But what processes are in place to give assurance to council and to the public that our internal processes are being adequately monitored by an external person? And I think we've talked about this before, but if you could just expand upon this one more time.
Didn't you just mention an audit? Wasn't that what you were just talking about? So Thomas, go ahead.
Through your chair. So, so as Ben has just kind of updated, especially on drinking water, the road side is kind of not regulated the way that the drinking water is. We at the town here have just implemented a very similar system just to maintain our sort of an internal QMS on the transportation side. That being said, we do have on drinking water 3 audits annually. One of them, which is referred to as an internal audit, we actually hire a third party to come in and do it. It's referred to as internal because effectively we could audit ourselves. If you've received training particular to internal drinking water auditor training courses, that report, which is what Ben's reporting on here, identifies nonconformances or opportunities for improvement. A nonconformance there effectively doesn't mean that we have poor drinking water quality. It speaks to like what you're saying, where either we had an issue with documentation where there was a signature missing or there was an opportunity for improvement. Hey, maybe you should look at doing this. It might make things more clear down the path or down the future. So all of the findings of that audit, as well as the MECP audit, which is the ministry audit, which is done annually, as well as our accreditation audit through another third party, again, that is hired through the government to basically check to make sure our systems are meeting the standard. Any action items that come from that are logged into I don't remember what we have the acronym for it now, but basically we do have an internal log where all these things are stored, a PCAR, preventative and corrective action report or something of that nature. And those then are followed up on and reported. One way that this is all communicated back to yourselves on the committee here, as well as the council, is through our annual management review through the summary reports that were just received. So there's really a lot of opportunities where this information is brought to council, as well as all of the audit findings are, effectively public information that can be accessed free at the counter here. So there really is a lot of transparency there, and the reports that we receive here are summarizing a lot of that because it is a large volume of information. I hope that kind of answers your question, but it is a very audited program.
Yes, it does. And I realize we have a lot of these internal processes that we're doing. In the financial world, of course, then we have external auditors who come in, and really that's what you're sharing with us, is that we have the MECP, we hire our own internal, I'll call it our own, the town hires our own, I'll call them water auditors as opposed to financial auditors, to also come in and do that, which is what happens on the side of finances as well. But I think maybe what's a little bit different is that on the financial side, we're used to seeing an actual audit report. We're used to seeing a member of that audit firm come and talk to us and say, these are the results of our external work. And I guess in this particular setting, that's not what I'm seeing. I think what I'm hearing from you is that that work is incorporated into the reports that we're getting, but we don't actually hear directly from those individuals. Could you just expand upon that?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So yes, you're accurate. The reports we provide are a summary, but just as a good example, the management review, which does include the actual audit reports received from MECP or received from the third-party auditor or received from our internal auditor, those actual summary or their official reports are included as appendix to the management review on an annual basis. So council does receive, and it is public to access the full report from the auditor. We just, again, summarize it for the report and kind of pick out the important things and try to crunch it down so it doesn't take all the time that Brandon took this morning or this evening on his report.
Thank you. And a test kit that expired in August but was used in September and October, and an Excel sheet formatting error are pretty specific levels of auditing that make me feel a lot more comfortable about what's going on. So thank you for that and for that detail, Ben. Any other questions for Ben? Seeing none, we don't need to accept that. Any other questions from the community? No. Is there any other new business pertaining to the committee? Member Spink.
Just on behalf of the citizens of Grimsby, and I'm sure the rest of the committee, I just want to thank the Public Works staff for the work that they did on the snowstorms in the last month. Talking to people in neighboring communities, I was very surprised to hear that they weren't out of their side streets, and mine had been cleared like the day before. And of course, the sidewalks. I got a lot of envy, from my neighbors in the adjoining communities. I just wanted to thank you all.
That's nice. Thank you, Member Spink. Any other new business? Seeing none, the next Public Works Committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, March 26th at 6:30 p.m. Good evening, everybody. The meeting is adjourned.